Your wife is still alive. Thomas Becket froze. The voice came from behind him, quiet, childlike, yet so piercing that it sliced through the drizzle blanketing the memorial garden. Slowly, he turned to face the speaker. A young black girl stood just beyond the circle of mourners. Her oversized hoodie clung to her thin frame, soaked from the rain. She couldn't have been older than 10. Her eyes were wide, serious. "What did you say?" Thomas asked, his voice cautious. "I saw her," the girl said again. "Your wife. She's not dead." One of his assistants chuckled under his breath. "Let's get Mr. Becket out of the rain." "Quiet," Thomas snapped. The girl took a step forward. "I was there the night she came out of the water. She was bleeding, scared. They dragged her into a van." Thomas's jaw clenched. "Little girl, I don't know what game you're playing, but my wife drowned in a storm off the coast. There were no survivors. We searched for weeks." She survived," the girl insisted. "I remember her." "And what makes you so sure it was her?" Thomas asked, folding his arms. "She had a scar," the girl said. "A long one, across her left arm. Right here." She traced from her elbow to her wrist. "And short, platinum, blonde hair." She kept yelling your name. Thomas's heart lurched. Elena had gotten that scar in college falling through a greenhouse window during a student protest. She never liked to talk about it. And that hair, after her chemotherapy, she kept it short, proud, and sharp as her spirit. Still, he shook his head. "That's not possible." "Yes, it is," the girl snapped. "They didn't let her go. A man, he had a fake arm, like a plastic one. He was in charge. He told them to drag her. I saw it all." Thomas's breath caught. He stared hard at the girl. What did this man look like? White, tall, gray beard, wore a long coat. He barked orders, like he was in the army or something. He told them, "Move her before anyone sees." The girl's voice shook now, not from fear but urgency. "She saw me. Your wife looked right at me." Her eyes were full of fear, but also like she knew I could help. Thomas blinked away the raindrops, or were they tears, gathering in his lashes? Part of him wanted to scream, to tell this child to stop torturing him with hope. But another part tone he hadn't let speak in months was listening. "She wore a necklace," the girl added, quieter now. "Gold, with a heart, 2 letters on it, E and B." Thomas felt the world tilt beneath his feet. He hadn't shared that detail with the press. No one had. That pendant had been a 10th anniversary gift, custom made. It had never left Elena's neck. If that moment made your heart stop too, you are not alone. What would you do if someone you loved might still be out there? Like this video if it moved you, comment below where you are watching from, and hit subscribe so you never miss a story that speaks to the soul. The girl reached into her hoodie pocket. From the folds, she pulled out a small handkerchief, light blue, rain-drenched, trimmed with lace. It was fraying at the edges, but one word was still readable, sewn in gold thread. "Elena." Thomas took a slow step toward her. "Where did you get this?" "Behind the old cannery," she said. "They stopped the van there that night. I watched from behind the fence." A long silence passed. The wind swept across the marble path, ruffling the petals Thomas had left at the memorial. The world around them blurred. Mourners, aides, umbrella sawl faded into the mist. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Maya." "And why are you telling me this now?" "Because no one else listened," Maya said. "I tried. I told a cop once." He laughed. "Told me to stop making up stories. But it wasn't a story. I saw everything." Thomas studied her face. Her eyes were too clear, her words too precise. He saw no signs of manipulation, just pain and truth. Behind him, one of the aides muttered, "Sir, the reporters are starting to move in." But Thomas didn't move. He looked down at the handkerchief in his palm, the golden thread catching the dim light. 1,000 memories came rushing back. Elena laughing on the yacht, reading on rainy mornings, the scar she tried to cover in summer. "You're serious," he whispered. "Maya noddet. Dead serious." Thomas turned to his assistant. "Get the car." "Sir." Now, as the black sedan rolled up, Thomas opened the door and motioned for Maya. "Come with me." Her eyes widened. "Really? If what you're saying is true," he said, "I need your help to bring her back." Maya climbed in. The car pulled away from the memorial. Far behind them, A man in a gray raincoat lowered a pair of binoculars and tapped a small device in his coat pocket. "They've made contact," he said into a hidden earpiece. "Proceed to step 2. Back inside the car, Thomas gripped the handkerchief tightly. For the first time in a year, he dared to believe again. And that scared him more than anything. The car was warm, a stark contrast to the rain-soaked silence between them. Thomas Beckett sat in the back seat, elbows on knees, handkerchief still clutched in one fist. Across from him, Maya stared out the window, droplets streaking down the glass like slow tears. Neither spoke for several blocks. Finally, Thomas broke the silence. "Maya, where exactly did you see them take her?" "Down by the docks," she said without turning. "Behind the old cannery on Pier 14. There's a chain-link fence with a hole in it. I hide there sometimes." Thomas leaned back, his mind already reaching through the fog of the past year, chasing shadows he'd forced himself to forget. "And this man with the artificial arm, you're sure?" "Yes," she said firmly. His left arm made a weird clicking sound when he moved it. It was white, like plastic, not like a normal prosthetic. Looked military. Thomas nodded slowly. That detail lodged deep in his memory. Years ago, his company had been in talks with a defense contractor developing tactical prosthetics for veterans. The project never made it past prototype. Or so he thought. "You said she looked scared?" he asked. "She was screaming," Maya said, finally meeting his gaze. "Not loud, more like begging. She tried to get away. That's when they grabbed her, dragged her. That man with the arm gave the order." Thomas exhaled, long and heavy. "And no one saw this but you?" Maya's face tightened. "I don't matter. People don't look at kids like me, especially not black ones sleeping near dumpsters." The honesty hit him hard. He hadn't thought about how invisible she must be in the city he ruled from penthouses and boardrooms. That same city let his wife disappear, and let Maya witness it, unseen. "Why did you wait a year to come to me?" "I didn't know who you were at first," she admitted. "Not until I saw a picture of you in a magazine at the library. It said you were giving a speech at the memorial today. That's when I knew." Thomas leaned back, rubbing his temples. The rain tapped against the roof like ticking clock hands. He looked at Maya again, her shoes still soaked, fingers curled in her lap, jaw set like someone much older. He softened his tone. "Do you have anywhere to go tonight?" She shook her head. "Then you'll stay at my house," he said. "At least until we sort this out." Her eyebrows lifted. "You don't even know me." I know enough. You brought me something no one else could. Doubt." He turned to the driver. "Head to the estate." As the car curved off the main road and into the hills, Thomas tapped a number into his phone. It rang twice before a gravelly voice answered. "Reese, it's me. I need your help." There was a pause. "You told me you were done." "I was," Thomas replied, "until 10 minutes ago. Now I need surveillance on Pier 14, the cannery, and everything within 5 blocks. Look for signs of containment, medical personnel, military contractors, anyone with an artificial arm." Another pause. Then, "What the hell did you just step in?" "Something I buried a year ago," Thomas said, "and it's clawing its way back." He hung up and turned to Maya. "We'll start with your story. I want you to tell me every detail. Nothing's too small." Maya hesitated. "Do you believe me now?" "I believe enough to put people on the ground," he said. "And that means something." Ugh. By the time they reached the Estatia sprawling modern home perched on the cliffs, Maya's eyes had grown wide. She'd never seen a driveway this long, never smelled the sea air from behind hand-carved iron gates. A housekeeper opened the door before they stepped out. "Mr. Beckett." "Shall I?" "She's with me," he said, gesturing to Maya. "Get her something warm to wear, and food, hot food." "Yes, sir." Inside, the home was quiet and tastefully furnished walnut floors, old jazz playing low from unseen speakers. Maya's shoes squeaked faintly as she stepped in. Thomas led her to the den, offered her a blanket and a seat by the fireplace. She didn't speak as the flames crackled to life, but the tension in her shoulders eased just slightly. Dinner came quickly: grilled cheese, tomato soup, and apple slices arranged like art. Maya stared at it for a long second before picking up the sandwich. "I haven't had real food in a long time," she said, voice barely audible. Thomas sat across from her, watching as she took careful bites. What about school? I go sometimes, when the shelters make me. He leaned forward. What would you say if I told you? If what you saw helps me find my wife, I'd make sure you never have to sleep under a pier again? Maya paused, looking at him carefully. You'd really do that? I don't make promises I won't keep. She nodded. Then I'll tell you everything. She did. From the moment she saw the van pull up, to the men in black loading Elena in, to the way one of them dropped a small box that Maya still had hidden something electronic, with strange writing. Thomas listened, absorbing every word, every gesture. Later that night, as Maya slept on the leather couch wrapped in blankets, Thomas sat in his office, lights low, phone to his ear. Reese again, the voice said. We have movement. Unregistered vehicles at the cannery, guards, no logos, and one man matching the prosthetic description. Thomas's jaw tightened. Don't engage. Just track. I want to know where they go, who they report to. Understood. As he ended the call, Thomas looked back through the glass at Maya sleeping. She hadn't lied. He could feel it in his bones. Something dark had stolen his wife from the ocean on. The truth had come walking into his life wearing wet shoes and an oversized hoodie. The storm wasn't coming. It was already here. The sun was barely up, casting a muted gray over the Beckett estate, but Thomas was already in motion. He hadn't slept. Instead, he had spent the night poring over maps of the harbor, blueprints of the cannery, and security footage from his private archives footage he paid to have filtered through the years for anything suspicious. None of it had shown Elena. But now, Maya's words had turned those ghost pixels into possibilities. In the dining room, Maya sat at the edge of a tall chair, eating scrambled eggs and toast with the kind of careful focus only hunger and suspicion can create. A fresh hoodie hung from her shoulders, new, clean, still smelling faintly of detergent. She looked smaller in daylight, but no less sure. Thomas stepped in, coffee mug in hand. Did you sleep well? Maya nodded between bites. The couch is softer than anything I've ever slept on. He smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. Good, because today, I need your help. Her eyes narrowed. You want me to come with you? Yes. I need you to show me exactly where it happened. Every step, every turn. Your memory is better than any satellite feed. She swallowed hard. Okay, but if they're still there, they won't see us, he said. We'll be careful. An hour later, they were downtown. Thomas's black SUV rolled slowly through the fog-covered streets, windows tinted, engine humming low. Maya guided him past warehouses and chain-link fences, pointing from the back seat with small, decisive fingers. There, she said, behind that dumpster, that's where I was hiding. The vehicle stopped across the street from the cannery. From the outside, it looked abandoned, rusted metal, broken windows, and a giant faded sign reading, New England Seafood Company. But Thomas had lived too long, and too deep in the corporate underworld, to believe in broken windows anymore. Wait here, he told Maya. Reese is already inside. Seconds later, his earpiece crackled. We've got movement. One guard. South exit. No uniforms, but definitely armed. Thomas looked at Maya. You said they took her around the side? Yeah, the left side, that door under the light. He nodded, then stepped out of the vehicle, his long coat flapping in the wind. Reese met him at the corner, crouched in the shadows. No signs of recent activity inside, Reese whispered. But I found something weird. They slipped through a back entrance, the smell of salt, rust, and rot clinging to the air. Inside, the building was a husk. Dust coated every surface. But in one corridor sealed off by a recently replaced padlock, Reese had found a room. When Thomas entered, the smell shifted. Bleach, metal, something surgical. The space was small, no bigger than a hospital room. A rusted cot lay in the center. Metal restraints hung from each corner. Beside it sat a tray, still holding an empty syringe. Thomas's blood ran cold. Then he saw it scratched faintly into the cement wall near the cot. A string of letters, shaky but legible. E.B. Elena Beckett, Reese muttered. This isn't just a hideout, it's a holding cell. Thomas stepped closer, running his fingers across the letters. They weren't old, maybe weeks, no more than 2 months. His wife had been here. He closed his eyes. She tried to leave a sign. She knew someone would come, Reese said quietly. Thomas turned to him. I want the building watched day and night. If they move her again, I want to know before her foot hits the floor. Reese nodded. There's more. Across the floor, I found this. He held up a bloodied scrap of cloth navy blue silk, embroidered in silver. Thomas took it. His throat tightened. It's part of her scarf, he whispered. Back at the SUV, Maya sat with her knees pulled to her chest. When Thomas returned, she looked up, questioning. You were right, he said. Her eyes flickered with something like pride but also sorrow. She was scared, wasn't she? He nodded. Very. She looked down. I don't understand why someone would take her. She's just a lady. She's not just a lady, Thomas said softly. She's my wife. And sometimes, when people can't control a man, they go after what he loves most. Maya didn't respond, but her hands clenched tighter around her sleeves. Thomas pulled out his phone. There's someone I need to talk to. Maya, I want you to stay here. Lock the doors. Reese will be nearby. He stepped away and dialed. A man answered on the second ring. Beckett. Glenn. A pause. Thomas. It's been a while. Not long enough. Another pause. Then Glenn said, Is there a reason you're calling me after a year of silence? Thomas's voice turned to ice. I have questions. About Elena. About the insurance settlement. About why certain documents went missing. I think you need rest, Thomas. The grief is... Don't, the word cut sharp. Just tell me, do you know a man with a prosthetic arm who used to work security for off-books transport? Glenn hesitated. I think you're chasing ghosts. No, Thomas said. I'm following footprints. He hung up. Back in the SUV, Maya watched him silently. They're scared, Thomas said. That's good. Scared people are dangerous, she whispered. He nodded. But so is the truth. As they drove away from the cannery, a storm began to gather overhead, dark clouds rolling in from the sea. And somewhere, not far from that broken building, a woman with platinum blonde hair traced the scar on her left arm and whispered to the dark, Hold on, Tom. I'm still here. Maya sat cross-legged on the couch in Thomas Beckett's study, the fire flickering against her face. The silence in the room had weight, broken only by the ticking of an antique clock on the mantel. She was drawing something she hadn't done in months. On a pad of fine sketch paper Thomas had given her, she etched the face of a woman with short, wavy hair and eyes filled with fear. Her pencil moved fast, certain. Thomas watched her from behind his desk, a file open before him. But his focus wasn't on the paper. It was on Maya. You've drawn her before, he said. Maya didn't look up, only in my head. Sometimes when I couldn't sleep, I'd try to remember her face so I wouldn't forget. He leaned forward. Why? Because she looked like she needed someone to remember her. Thomas felt something tighten in his chest. So much of the world had moved on. Stocks recovered. The press lost interest. But this girl, with nothing and no one, had held onto his wife's face like a sacred memory. I want you to come with me tomorrow, he said. She looked up. Where? To meet someone who worked in the harbor patrol. He owes me. He might remember something unusual from the night of the accident. Maya nodded. Okay. But Maya, he hesitated, then spoke carefully. If something ever happens, if I'm not there, I need you to run, not freeze, run, and call the number I gave you. Understand? She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded again. I'm not scared. You should be, he murmured, almost to himself. That night, as the house settled into quiet, Thomas took the sketch Maya had left on the coffee table and stared at it under the lamplight. Elena. Even without color, it was her. Every contour, every line. But something else struck him. In the sketch, Elena's eyes weren't just afraid, they were pleading. Help me, he whispered to the empty room. The next morning was dry and cold. They drove to a marina on the edge of town, where a fleet of patrol boats lay moored beside peeling docks. Thomas led Maya down to a narrow slip, where an old man in a denim jacket was smoking a cigar beside a powerboat. Beckett, the man greeted, voice like gravel. Ray, Thomas said, extending a hand. Thanks for meeting me. Ray looked at Maya, eyes narrowing slightly. This your kid? She's a witness. Ray took another puff. You said this was about Elena. I thought you buried that storm. I did, Thomas said. But she didn't stay buried. Ray squinted. What do you mean? Thomas nodded at Maya. She stepped forward, voice steady. I saw her get pulled from the water. I saw where they took her. Ray looked stunned, but not skeptical. He glanced at Thomas, then back at the girl. That night, there was something, a distress beacon, unregistered. We logged it, but then someone from Homeland called and told us to delete the report, said it was a drill. Where was it? Thomas asked sharply. Ray walked over to a cabinet inside his boat and pulled out a laminated chart. He circled an area off the coast. Right there, near Deadman's Bluff. That's where the ping came from. Thomas frowned. No one followed up? Ray shook his head. After the call, we were told to forget it. Thomas ran a hand through his hair, another thread in a web growing too wide, too fast. He turned to Maya. Do you remember hearing any helicopters? She shook her head. Just engines. Like vans or trucks. Ray handed Thomas the chart. You going after her? Yes. The old man nodded. Then watch your back. If they silence this fast, they'll come for anyone who digs. On the drive back, Maya was quiet. Her fingers traced the edge of the map. Do you think they knew she'd survive? I think they hoped she wouldn't, Thomas said. And when she did, they hit her. Why her? Maya asked. She's just your wife. Thomas hesitated, then said, she wasn't just a wife. She was working on a lawsuit tone that could have exposed half a dozen shipping executives for money laundering and human trafficking. She was weeks from going public. Maya turned to him, her eyes wide. So this wasn't about you? No, Thomas said. It was about silencing her. Maya sat back, stunned. They tried to erase her, Thomas nodded. And they almost did, until you saw her. That night, they returned home to find the gates slightly ajar. Thomas's instincts screamed. Stay here, he told Maya. He stepped out cautiously, walking toward the door. It was unlocked. Inside, the lights were still on, but a drawer in the study had been pulled open, papers spilled on the floor. Reese arrived minutes later. Someone searched your office. No forced entry. Whoever did this had a passcode. Thomas clenched his fists. That means someone close. Maya hovered in the hallway, hugging herself. Thomas turned to her. You okay? She nodded. They're watching us, aren't they? Yes. Good, she whispered. That means they're scared. He gave her a small, proud smile. Yeah, it does. Later, as they stood in the quiet living room, Maya looked at the large family portrait over the fireplace, Thomas and Elena, laughing in the sun. She's still alive, she said. I can feel it. Thomas looked at her, voice low. Then we find her. No matter what it takes. Outside, a car idled on the street, a figure inside watching through binoculars. She's more trouble than we thought, the voice whispered into a phone. The girl's memory is too good. Then make it her last, came the reply. The line went dead. But inside the Beckett house, the fire burned brighter than ever. The following morning, Thomas stood in the driveway, watching the ocean mist roll up the cliffs. He held the map Ray had marked, folding and unfolding it with the same tension he used to crush boardroom deals. But this was different. This wasn't profit, it was life. Elena's life. And now, Maya's safety hung in the same balance. Inside, Maya was quietly eating cereal, eyes darting toward every window, every creak of the house settling. The break-in had shaken her, but not broken her. If anything, it hardened her resolve. She was starting to understand what it meant to be part of something dangerous, something bigger than herself. Thomas stepped back in and handed her a small object. This is a GPS beacon. Wear it, always. She turned it over in her palm. You think they'll try again? I don't think, I know. Reese entered the room, a tablet in hand. I ran a scan through every offshore holding connected to the men Elena was about to expose. Shell companies, dummy trusts most, were dissolved after the incident. But one's still active. He handed the tablet to Thomas, who studied the screen. Ashmont Holdings, registered in Delaware. But the account activity traces back to a supply depot 2 miles from the site where Maya saw Elena taken. Maya stood up. So that's where she is? Thomas nodded. Or where they took her before moving her again. Either way, we go tonight. Maya looked out the window. What if it's a trap? Then we spring it on them first. That night, They drove without headlights down a service road that carved through coastal hills. The vehicle was dark, silent. Reese drove, Thomas navigated, and Maya sat between them with the tablet clutched to her chest. The depot looked dead from a distance, just another corrugated warehouse by the sea. No markings, no lights. But through a pair of long-range binoculars, Thomas saw what he expected. Movement. 2 men smoking outside, another pacing near the loading bay, all dressed in plain clothes, but standing like soldiers. They parked a quarter-mile away and continued on foot, keeping to the shadows. Maya, now wearing a dark hoodie and gloves, followed their steps exactly, silent and light. Reese motioned them down. Thermal scans show 3 inside, 1 stationary, possibly restrained. Thomas's heart pounded. Elena? Can't confirm. They crept around the rear, where an old vent provided access to the building's underbelly. Reese pried it open, and one by one, they slid inside. The crawl space was tight and smelled of rust and salt. Maya squirmed through like a cat, her small frame perfectly suited for the narrow path. At the end of the duct, Reese used a fiber optic camera to peer into the room below. "What do you see?" Thomas whispered. He paused, then whispered back. "One man standing, arms mechanical. It's him." Maya's breath caught. "That's the one." Reese nodded. Another man guarding a woman, blonde, tied to a chair. Thomas's vision blurred for a second. His heart thundered so loud it seemed to fill the narrow space. "We go in hard," Reese said. "Quiet. Fast." They exited the vent into darkness, moving silently behind crates and support beams. Then, with perfect synchronicity, they struck. Reese tackled the guard by the door, his silencer puffing twice before the man dropped. Thomas rushed toward the woman, tearing duct tape from her mouth. Elena, it's me." Her head lolled weakly, but her eyes focused. "Tom?" He pulled her into his arms. "I've got you. You're safe." But behind him, a metal click echoed. Thomas turned. The man with the artificial arm stood there, gun raised, blood dripping from his nose where Reese had struck him. "You don't know what you're doing," the man growled. "I know exactly what I'm doing," Thomas replied, shielding Elena. The man sneered. "She had evidence. Names. They paid me to make it disappear, but she wouldn't die. Should have just let the sea finish the job." Thomas took a step forward, dropped the weapon. Before he could answer, a voice from the shadows barked, "Drop it first." Maya stepped out, a heavy flashlight in both hands. It wasn't a gun, but she held it like one, fearless. "You again," the man spat. "You're just a stupid kid." Maya's eyes narrowed. "Then why are you scared of me?" In the moment of distraction, Reese lunged and disarmed the man, knocking him unconscious with a final blow. Thomas turned to Maya, stunned. "You could have been hurt," she shrugged. "I'm tired of hiding." They carried Elena out through the same vent, her breathing shallow but steady. Outside, a black van waited. Reese's team had called backup. Medics were ready. As the doors closed, Thomas held Elena's hand. "You're safe now." She coughed, barely a whisper. "Not all of them. Gone." Thomas leaned in. "What?" Her eyes locked on his. "Ashmont. It's just one. Part. Others. Watching." He nodded. "We'll find them." Beside him, Maya held the sketch she had brought, the one of Elena's face. "Keep it," Elena rasped, smiling faintly. "It's better than any photo." As the van sped away, Thomas looked back at the depot, dark now, but still full of secrets. This was no ending. It was a beginning, one they would face together. Thomas sat at Elena's bedside in the private medical wing of his estate, the silence between them broken only by the soft beeping of monitors. Her face, pale and bruised, was almost unrecognizable beneath layers of fatigue. Yet her grip, despite the IV running into her arm, remained strong, fingers woven tightly through his. There was still fire in her, though it burned quietly now. Maya stood at the door, hesitant. Thomas motioned her in. "She wanted to see you." Maya approached slowly. Elena's eyes flicked toward her, lips twitching into a weak but grateful smile. "The girl," she whispered. "Her name is Maya," Thomas said softly. Elena nodded. "Thank you, Maya. I saw you. That night, you didn't look away." Maya's voice caught in her throat. I didn't know what to do. I was just a kid. You were brave, Elena whispered. That's more than most. Thomas watched the exchange, a lump building in his chest. It was Maya, not the police, not the press, who had seen what others had ignored. A child from the margins, a shadow society had learned not to see, had refused to see. Later that morning, Thomas met Reese in the estate study, the table covered in files and digital printouts. Anything? Thomas asked. Reese tapped the screen of a tablet. Plenty. Our friend with the artificial arm, he was working under the alias Gideon Price, former private military, disappeared from the system 3 years ago, resurfaced as head of security for several offshore installations. Thomas leaned in. Including Ashmont? Yes, and 3 others, all registered to shell companies based in Luxembourg. But guess what they all have in common? Reese flipped the screen to show a blurry security image, containers being unloaded at a Portno markings, but a distinct symbol painted on one corner, a black triangle over a white field. Elena had that symbol in her files, Thomas said, jaw tightening. She believed it was connected to a trafficking ring going using shipping routes to move more than just cargo. She was right, Reese said, and now they know she's still alive. Thomas exhaled slowly. Then we need to hit them before they vanish again. Reese nodded. I've already arranged satellite recon. There's one site still active off the Gulf Coast. Remote. Isolated. But not invisible. Good, Thomas said. We go tonight. But as they spoke, across the estate, Maya stood outside Elena's room, staring at a photograph of Thomas and his wife on the wall. Something about the smile on Elena's face looked different than the woman she saw that night. Stronger, more open, but now, there was fear behind her eyes. Still, Maya turned as Elena's voice called out faintly, "Come here, sweetheart." Maya entered the room, where Elena sat up slightly. Her face was pale, but her gaze was sharp. "They'll come again," she said. "You understand that, don't you?" Maya nodded. "They already tried." Elena's hand found hers. "This isn't just about me anymore. They saw you. They'll want to silence you too." Maya looked down. "Then let them come. I'm not scared." Elena smiled. "That's what scares them." Downstairs, Thomas prepared a go-bag satellite phone, encrypted flash drives, Glock 17, extra magazines. His heart felt heavier than ever. Elena was home, but the storm hadn't passed. It had simply changed direction. By evening, the team was en route to Louisiana, where the last operational outpost stood on the edge of a forgotten bayou. It wasn't on any modern maps built decades ago as a weather station, then sold to a private firm. No roads, only swamp and silence. They landed via private chopper 2 miles out, finishing the journey by boat. The facility loomed from the mist gray, square, soulless, 2 towers, 1 dock. No guards visible, but Thomas knew better than to trust appearances. Inside the boat, Reese loaded his weapon. "No mistakes tonight." Thomas nodded. "We go in, get the servers, and get out. No heroics." But as they disembarked, Maya's voice crackled through the headset. She'd stayed behind at the surveillance van with a comms tech. "Thomas, I see something. Northwest corner of the building. There's movement." Thomas crouched behind a pile of crates. Details? A man, armed, talking to someone through an earpiece. "I think they're evacuating files." Thomas cursed. "They knew we were coming." "Then we move now," Reese said. They advanced in tight formation, neutralizing 2 guards at the perimeter. Inside, rows of servers blinked in blue and green. Thomas made for the data core, inserting an encrypted drive. Files began copying. In the corner of the room, a shadow moved. "Drop it," Reese barked. The figure froze young, terrified, arms in the air. "I'm just the tech. I don't know anything." Thomas stepped forward. "How long has the site been active?" 6 months. They bring crates, never open them. We just process IDs. "What kind of IDs?" "Immigration, falsified papers. I swear I never asked questions." The files completed. Thomas yanked the drive. "Get out." Outside, floodlights cut through the fog. Another boat arrived, figures disembarking quickly. "Go now," Reese shouted. They sprinted back to the dock as gunfire cracked the silence. Bullets splintered wood, sparked off metal. Thomas dove behind a barrel, returning fire. Then, through the headset, Maya's voice. "Left side, there's a path through the reeds. GPS shows a narrow inlet. You can escape that way." They followed her lead, running low through the marsh. Shots echoed behind them, but none followed. Within minutes, they were back at the extraction point, soaked, breathless, alive. In the van, Maya watched their dots converge on the map and exhaled. They made it. Back at the estate, Thomas placed the encrypted drive on his desk. "This ends soon." Elena, standing behind him, said, "Number this begins now." And beside them, Maya whispered, "Let's burn it all down." The file decrypted at 3:14 a.m. Thomas, Elena, and Reese hovered around the massive screen in the estate's secure room, eyes locked on the scrolling data. Names, bank transfers, images grainy, time-stamped photos of shipping containers, clandestine meetings, and fake passports. Elena leaned against the back of Thomas's chair, her breath shallow but steady, her eyes sharpened by clarity and rage. "This is it," she whispered. "Everything I tried to expose." Reese scrolled to the next folder. "There's more. Look at this." A list appeared. Locations, dates, next shipments. Dozens of them routes disguised as disaster relief, as environmental research, all tied to the same symbol, the black triangle. Thomas stood. "How many people have they trafficked through this?" "Hundreds," Reese said grimly. "Maybe more." Maya entered the room, holding a steaming cup of tea for Elena. Her hoodie sleeves were rolled up, showing small ink marks where she'd been taking notes of her own. "I found something," she said. "One of the names on the list showed up in a news article last year. A woman named Leora Bensley disappeared while covering a story on corruption in Honduras." Elena froze. "I remember her. She contacted me once, said she had something explosive, then she vanished." Thomas glanced at Reese. "Can we find her?" "I don't know. But the file says she was seen near an offshore station off Miami 6 months ago." Thomas looked at Maya. "You want to go with us?" Maya didn't blink. "I need to." That afternoon, they flew to Miami under assumed names. Elena stayed behind still recovering, still watched over. But Thomas and Maya, now shadow and fire, moved swiftly. The offshore station was technically an oceanic climate research facility. But when they arrived via rented catamaran, it looked like anything but. Rusted towers, masked guards, and no research equipment in sight. They docked half a mile away, then swam the rest under cover of darkness. Maya moved like she'd done this before, lean, quick, and silent. Inside, the station's hallways hummed with cold lights and the distant clink of metal. Thomas held his breath with every step. Maya crept ahead, using a salvaged access card from the last raid. It worked. In the center chamber, they found what they didn't dare hope for. A cage of people 8 in total, cramped behind steel bars. One woman stepped forward as they opened the gate. Her face was gaunt, hair cropped unevenly, but her eyes were full of defiance. "Leora Bensley?" Thomas asked. She nodded, voice hoarse. "Took you long enough." Maya helped her down the corridor while Thomas and Reese covered their backs. Suddenly, alarms blared. They'd been found. "Move," Reese barked. They sprinted through the hall, ducking into an access tunnel that dropped down to the subdeck. Maya clung to Leora, guiding her steps. Behind them, gunfire ricocheted off metal. But Maya didn't flinch. She ran, pulled, turned corners like she'd memorized the floor plan. At the dock, their escape boat waited, already running. As they boarded, Reese dropped a small black object behind him. "Gift," he muttered. As they sped from the platform, the explosion thundered behind them, tearing through the compound's east wing. Fire lit the sea. No more hiding. Back at the safe house, Leora sat at a makeshift table, drinking clean water like it was champagne. She looked at Thomas. "You want to burn them down?" "We already started." She slid a flash drive across the table. "Then take this. It's everything I gathered before they grabbed me. Names, locations, codes they use to move people. You put this in the right hands, they'll never hide again." Maya asked, "Why didn't you give it up before?" "I didn't trust anyone," Leora said. "But your girl, she looked at me the same way Elena did, like I still mattered." Thomas placed the drive in a secure pouch. "You'll stay here. We'll protect you." "No," she said. "I want to speak. I want my face on the news." I want them to know I survived. Thomas met her gaze, nodded. We'll make it happen. The next morning, the story broke. Leora Bensley, journalist missing for over a year, reappeared on live television. She named names. She detailed the torture, the bribes, the disappearances. Her words ignited fires across the country. Protests, investigations. Anonymous tips flooded law enforcement. Back at the estate, Thomas watched the screen in silence. Elena came to sit beside him, her fingers brushing his. You did it. We did it. From the hallway, Maya peeked in. There's something outside. Thomas stepped onto the porch. Parked across the street was a black sedan. Inside sat a man in a dark suit, watching. No plates. Reese appeared at the door behind him. They're getting desperate. Thomas nodded. Let them come. That night, he sat with Maya in the study. You don't have to keep going, he told her. She looked at him, eyes fierce. Yes, I do. He smiled. Then we fight together, and deep in the woods beyond the estate. A signal tower blinked to life. The final storm was coming, and this time, the world would be watching. 3 days after Leora's televised statement, the world had changed. National news outlets ran the story 24/7. Networks replayed her every word, her every scar. Overnight, names that once sat quietly behind walls of corporate immunity now echoed through headlines with shame and accusation. Some vanished, some resigned, a few were arrested, but most were still out there. At the Beckett estate, the silence that followed wasn't peace. It was pressure, thick, tense, like the moment before glass shatters. Thomas sat in the command room with Reese, reviewing a dossier just delivered by an anonymous contact inside the Department of Homeland Security. It confirmed what they already feared. The Black Triangle Network reached into agencies designed to protect them. Every investigation risked sabotage. Reese tapped a line on the screen. There, that's the node, Central Command, a facility disguised as an underground records archive just outside Phoenix. Thomas studied it. We take it out, the web collapses. Yeah, Reese said, but it's locked tighter than Fort Knox. Elena entered, looking stronger than she had in weeks. Her voice was firm. Then we don't knock, we flood it. Maya, who had been curled in the corner sketching, looked up. What does that mean? Thomas turned to her. It means we don't sneak in quietly. We expose them with light, live, loud, with proof. That night, Maya and Elena worked together, comparing files matching receipts, encoded shipments, hidden bank transfers. What began as a revenge mission now looked more like a revolution. They weren't just chasing shadows anymore. They were building a case that could crumble an empire. In the early hours of morning, Reese briefed the team. Tomorrow, 0600, we move. We get into the facility, plant the transmitters, and activate the live feed. No filters, no delay. The whole world will see what they've hidden. Thomas turned to Maya. You're not coming. I have to, she protested. No, he said. You're the backup. If we fail, you upload everything. You're our failsafe. She hated it but nodded. She understood. By sunrise, the team was en route. A private plane dropped them 3 miles from the target zone, where armored SUVs waited. The Arizona heat rose in waves across the sand, the desert both beautiful and cruel. From a bluff, they saw it, a low building nestled against rock, guarded but not flashy, nondescript, perfect for secrets. Thomas checked his earpiece. Everyone ready? Reese's voice came through. In position. The operation moved with precision. Entry through a ventilation shaft. 2 guards silently subdued. Down a hallway lined with climate-controlled vaults. Past sensors and retinal scanners Reese had disabled remotely. In the heart of the structure, they found it. A server farm bigger than anything Thomas had imagined. Racks of drives pulsed with data, the heartbeat of a global crime machine. Thomas planted the transmitter. Elena, appearing via encrypted link, prepared the broadcast. Then a voice came from the shadows. Well done, it said, slow and smooth. A man stepped forward, tall, silver-haired, calm. He wore no uniform, no armor. Just a charcoal suit and a knowing smile. I was wondering how long it would take you to reach the center. Thomas stepped between him and the others. Who are you? Call me Hale, the man said. I used to run intelligence in 4 continents. Now I manage. Risk. Elena's voice snapped through the earpiece. He's on the original list. Hale J. Whitmore. Ex-CIA turned private consultant. Vanished 5 years ago. Hale smiled. I never vanished. I just became quieter. Reese raised his weapon. Step aside. But Hale didn't flinch. Do you really think uploading a few files changes anything? Systems don't collapse because of data. They collapse when belief does. And no one believes in justice anymore. Thomas took a step forward. Then let's give them a reason. He pressed the trigger on the transmitter. Instantly, every screen in the server room blinked and switched to live broadcast. Faces, victims, contracts, names, money trails. Across the world, phones vibrated, computers froze, television screens turned black, then lit with the truth. Hale's smile faded. You'll be hunted. Thomas stared him down. Then we'll make it worth the chase. Sirens blared outside. The facility's security had been compromised. Footsteps thundered in the hall. Hale turned and disappeared into the shadows before they could stop him. The team retreated through a tunnel route, emerging on the far side of the ridge, where helicopters waited. Back at the estate, Maya watched it all unfold, live on every channel, every app. Tears streamed down her face, not out of fear, but relief. They did it. They told the world. Later that night, as the house finally settled, Thomas sat by the fireplace with Elena and Maya. A rare peace blanketed them. People are scared now, Maya said. Thomas nodded. Good, but fear fades. We'll have to keep pushing. Elena squeezed Maya's hand. This time, we won't be alone. Outside, protesters had already begun to gather in cities across the country. Signs held high. Names shouted into the night. Justice, awakened from slumber. In the distance, Hale watched from a black SUV, face unreadable. You think they've won? The driver asked. Hale exhaled slowly. Number, they've just started a fire. But in the Beckett home, surrounded by truth, defiance, and the unlikeliest of heroes, the fire wasn't fear, it was hope. And for the first time in a long time, no one felt invisible. The days that followed were chaos wrapped in revelation. Major networks scrambled to verify what had been streamed globally, documents detailing trafficking routes, names of senior officials, private security firms laundering human lives behind layers of research and development. Protesters flooded cities from Boston to San Francisco. Politicians either distanced themselves or went into hiding. One senator resigned. Another was arrested stepping off a private jet in Zurich. But inside the Beckett estate, silence reigned. Not the uneasy kind that follows danger, but the heavy, loaded kind that precedes a decision. Thomas stood before the war room screen, arms crossed, eyes scanning reports. Elena was at the far desk, speaking in hushed tones to a civil rights attorney readying a global lawsuit. Maya sat beside her, laptop open, eyes bouncing between satellite images and encrypted messages from whistleblowers. I found something, Maya said, pointing. A memo buried in a backup folder. It references a Directive 81. It's some kind of contingency, like emergency removal. Thomas walked over. Removal of what? She clicked through the document. Not what, who. Targets. They listed names, survivors, whistleblowers, us. Elena froze. They've prepared for exposure. Reese entered then, holding a sealed envelope. This was just delivered by a courier, no return address. Thomas took it and opened it slowly. Inside was a single photograph, black and white. A teenage Maya, maybe 12 years old, standing on a school playground. Circling her was a red marker. Below it, a typed message. Clean the mistake. Maya's eyes widened, her face paling. They've marked you, Thomas said. From the beginning. Elena looked between them. What did they mean, mistake? Maya's voice cracked. I saw something when I was a kid. I didn't understand it then. But it was them. Men in uniforms. Moving a group of women into trucks. My school was right next to an abandoned industrial site. I told a teacher. She told me to forget it. Thomas clenched the photograph in his fist. They've had eyes on you since then. But when you saw Elena and spoke out, you became the spark they couldn't contain. I don't want to run, Maya whispered. You won't, Elena said, gently touching her arm. We stand. The room shifted then from strategy to purpose. They weren't just fighting to reveal the truth. They were fighting to survive it. That night, Thomas met with Reese and Elena in the underground strategy room. The screens showed a flurry of new threats: underground forums, bounty chatter, encrypted messages warning of upcoming strikes. "They'll hit the estate," Reese said. "They'll try to make it look like an accident, a robbery gone wrong. If we stay, we die." Thomas shook his head. "If we run, they win. We hold the line here." He turned to Elena. "Call Leora. Tell her to prep the second wave of evidence. If anything happens to us, she releases everything." The next day, the estate transformed into a fortress. Security drones patrolled the grounds. Surveillance feeds flickered on every screen. Maya trained with Reese, learning how to move fast, how to shoot, how to hide without leaving a trace. She didn't hesitate. "You were made for this," Reese told her one evening as she dismantled and reassembled her training pistol. "I was made invisible," she replied. "Now I see them." That night, while the house lay quiet under a crescent moon, a perimeter alert tripped. Thomas rushed to the command center. On the screen, 3 silhouettes, moving with precision, dressed in black, approaching the east wall. "They're here," he said. Reese was already strapping on gear. "We hold them off long enough to send the final broadcast." Maya stood at the door, defiant. "I'm staying." Thomas stared at her, then nodded. "You know what to do." The assault came like a flood. 3 became 6, then 10, armed, trained, silent. But the estate fought back security systems, traps, drones. Reese and his team pushed them into bottlenecks, disarmed 2, captured 1 alive. But not without a price. A deafening blast took out part of the west wing. Smoke filled the halls. Elena ushered Maya into a safe corridor, pushing a hard drive into her hands. "If we fall," she said, "you finish it." "I won't let you fall," Maya said. In the command room, Thomas was bleeding, shoulder grazed, adrenaline masking the pain. Reese stood guard at the door, breathing hard. From the corner, the captured manhood removed, face twisted with fanaticism, smiled. "You think this ends with you?" Thomas walked over, blood trickling down his arm. "Number, it ends with the world. And you just gave us the last piece." The man frowned. "What?" "You talked. We recorded it." Elena stepped in. "And now the world will see you." Within minutes, the team uploaded the final data confessions, internal memos, orders with Hale's name, names of funders and lobbyists. Every channel received it. There was no stopping it. Outside, sirens wailed. Reinforcements, local police, federal agents summoned by Reese's emergency protocols, swept in. The invaders fled. Some were caught. Others vanished. But inside the estate, battered and bruised, the survivors stood. Thomas, bloodied but upright. Elena, breathless but unbroken. Maya, eyes shining, still holding the drive. They had not only survived, they had made history bleed. And far away, in a darkened boardroom, Hale watched the footage of his network crumbling. He didn't scream. He didn't panic. He smiled, because the war wasn't over. But for the first time, it was no longer silent. The estate bore the scars of war, walls scorched, glass shattered. A section of the west wing blackened by fire, yet the American flag outside still flew torn. Yes, but not fallen. The world had seen what happened. They had heard the truth. But now, something more dangerous stirred. Retaliation. 3 days after the attack, Thomas met with federal agents in a sealed room beneath the courthouse in D.C. The evidence they'd uploaded had triggered congressional hearings and emergency task forces. Over a dozen arrests were made, but Hale wasn't one of them. "He's vanished," said Agent Calder, a wiry man with deep lines around his mouth. "We froze 7 of his shell accounts. Still, no activity. He's gone ghost." "He's not hiding," Thomas said, staring at the digital board showing Hale's photo. "He's preparing." Agent Calder folded his arms. "Your estate was a battlefield. Public opinion is on your side now, but this guy plays long game. He'll let the noise fade and strike again." Thomas's jaw tightened. "Then we draw him out." Back at the estate, Elena sat in the recovery room with Maya. Though she'd suffered bruises and smoke inhalation, Maya had emerged fiercer than ever. Still, something was gnawing at her. She stared out the window, knees drawn to her chest. "You haven't said a word in hours," Elena said gently. I keep thinking about what would have happened if I hadn't spoken up that day, Maya murmured. All these people would have stayed hidden. You gave them a voice, Elena said. No, Maya whispered. I gave them a reason to be seen. That night, Thomas returned with news. We're being called to testify, he said. Congressional hearing. Elena, Maya, you both. They want it public. Elena raised an eyebrow. You're joking. They need the human faces, Thomas explained. The names alone aren't enough anymore. The people need to see the victims, the survivors, the girl who remembered. Maya looked up. I'll do it. Thomas stared at her, surprised. You're sure? She nodded. They used my silence once, never again. In the days leading up to the hearing, they prepared. Thomas worked with attorneys and security experts. Elena coordinated with journalists, ensuring the broadcast would be global. Maya rehearsed with coaches not to memorize words, but to hold herself steady when every camera turned. You'll be fine, Thomas said one night as they stood in the study. You've already faced worse than anything that room can throw at you. Maya took a deep breath. I'm not scared of them. I'm scared of what comes after. The world changes slowly, he said, but not without people like you. The day of the hearing arrived. The marble halls of the Capitol buzzed with press and protesters. Maya walked beside Thomas and Elena. Her steps light but certain. When they entered the chamber, flashbulbs erupted. Inside, senators sat stiffly behind long wooden desks. Cameras streamed live to millions. Elena testified first, calm, articulate, exposing how the network silenced her, then tried to erase her altogether. Thomas followed, detailing the digital trail, the attacks, the names, but it was Maya seated on a small cushion behind the witness table who brought the room to stillness. Please state your name for the record, the chairman asked. Maya Lillian Owens, she said. How old are you? 15. A beat. And what would you like to tell us? Maya looked directly at the camera. I saw a woman get dragged from the sea. I saw her scream. I saw men with guns sewn with a fake arm puller into a van. I was 10 years old. I told my teacher. No one believed me. Not until I met Mr. Beckett. And then I saw what hiding the truth does to people. It makes them disappear. The room was frozen. One senator leaned forward. Why did you speak out now? Because I was tired of being invisible. Outside the chamber, the crowd watching erupted into applause. Tweets went viral. Hashtags exploded. Number ICU Maya began trending globally. By nightfall, the committee issued an emergency order. Every company and official named in the files would be investigated under federal oversight. A special task force was established. For the first time, the phrase, Black Triangle, entered the congressional record. But elsewhere miles away, in a lavish coastal compound, Hale watched the hearing from a projection room, swirling scotch in a crystal glass. She's dangerous, a woman beside him said. No, Hale replied, smiling faintly. She's necessary. The woman frowned. Then why are we not stopping her? Because now, Hale said, standing, we change tactics. Back at the Beckett estate, the family gathered in quiet celebration. Reporters waited at the gates. Security tripled, but inside, they ate together, laughed, exhaled. You did it, Thomas told Maya as she curled up with hot cocoa. No, she said sleepily. We did it. But as Thomas stared out the window toward the distant hills, he couldn't shake the feeling. This wasn't victory. This was intermission. And somewhere out there, in the calm between storms, a new shadow stirred. 2 weeks passed. Long enough for headlines to cycle. Long enough for attention to shift. Though Maya's testimony still echoed across talk shows and think pieces, the urgency that had gripped the nation began to wane. Justice, it seemed, had a short memory. But not for Thomas. He stood in the upper observatory of the Beckett estate, a rare moment alone as stars blinked in the cold Arizona sky. Below, lights from the perimeter security glowed faintly constant reminders that peace, for them, was conditional, temporary. Reese entered quietly. It's starting again. Thomas didn't turn. Where? South Africa. A clinic bombed. Same symbol black triangle carved into the wall. Thomas inhaled through his nose. Hale's shifting the board. He's no longer protecting the network, Reese said. He's resurrecting it. Inside, Maya sat at the long oak table, papers scattered before her. She was no longer just the girl with a sketch pad. She had become something harder, sharper. She studied patterns, now flight logs, shipping manifests, real-time chat room intel scraped from deep web corners. Elena placed a warm hand on her shoulder. "You need rest." "I need to stay ahead," Maya replied, eyes locked on the screen. "Elena," Thomas called from the hallway. "It's time." In the briefing room, they gathered Reese, Elena, Maya, and two new faces, Agent Marla Green from the FBI's Human Trafficking Unit and Julian Price, a data analyst who once worked in Hale's digital operations before defecting. Julian brought up a map, red dots scattered globally, with one flashing in the North Atlantic. "This one is different," he said. "Off the coast of Iceland. Former NATO listening station. It's been offline for years or so, they claimed. I've tracked 7 communications relays pinging from that location in the last 24 hours. Reese whistled. "That's command-grade traffic." Julian nodded. "We believe that's where Hale's operating from now. It's dark, cold, perfect for a reset." Elena stepped forward. "We end it there." Thomas turned to Maya. "You're not going this time." Maya frowned. "Why?" "Because you're the symbol now," Elena said. "If something happens to you, this movement fractures." Maya sat back, struggling to accept it. "You won us a voice," Thomas added. "Now we need you to keep using it. Rally people. Keep them focused. If we fail, they need to believe the fight still matters." Maya nodded slowly. "Then you bring him back." 2 nights later, a private jet cut through icy skies. Thomas, Reese, Elena, Julian, and a tactical unit disembarked at an abandoned airfield in northern Iceland. Snow whipped sideways. Wind howled like a warning. They moved in silence, snowshoes crunching over frozen earth. The facility emerged like a beast from the mistangular, metallic, partially buried into a cliffside. No lights, no sound, just a signal pulsing beneath the ground. They entered through a rear maintenance shaft Julian had mapped. Inside, the corridors were narrow, lined with frost and old surveillance wiring. The deeper they went, the warmer it grew, the hum of servers vibrating beneath their boots. In the command chamber, they found it. A digital hub, massive monitors displaying live feeds from various operations around the globe, data streams, drone cams, payment confirmations. The machine had evolved, but it was still the same beast. Hale was waiting. He stood at the center, alone, no guards, no weapons. Thomas raised his pistol. "Step away." "I'm not armed," Hale said calmly. "You've already won, haven't you?" Elena narrowed her eyes. "Where are your people?" Hale gestured to the screens. "Everywhere, nowhere. I no longer need soldiers, just systems." Julian accessed the control terminal. "I can shut it down." "You can't," Hale said. "It's decentralized. Every node you destroy spawns another. Cut one head, 2 grow back." Reese scoffed. "You're coding Hydra now?" "I'm coding survival," Hale said. Thomas advanced slowly. "You hurt innocent people. You sold them, branded them, buried them." I did what governments do," Hale replied. "Efficiently." Julian typed furiously. "He's not lying. The system replicates in real time." Elena looked Hale in the eyes. "Why let us find you?" "Because," he said, smiling faintly, "I'm tired, and I wanted to see what hope looks like before I die." A sudden clatter echoed from behind. One of their agents dropped, a dart in his neck. Then another. "Ambush!" Reese yelled, firing toward the entrance. Masked figures stormed, insolent, fast, lethal. Not soldiers, not mercenaries, operatives. Hale's last hand. Thomas pulled Elena behind the console. "Get the drives." Reese returned fire, dropping 2 attackers. Julian ducked beneath the terminal, yanking hard drives free and stuffing them into his coat. "I have the core files," he shouted. "Go," Thomas ordered. The team fled through the maintenance shaft, gunfire chasing them. Hale stayed behind, untouched, watching it all unfold. Outside, a snowmobile team awaited extraction. They escaped into the blizzard, wounded but alive, carrying everything Hale had built. Hours later, back at the safe house, Elena stared at the decrypted files. Names, new ones, ones never exposed. "We finally got him," she said. Thomas sat beside her. exhaustion heavy in his bones. "No," he said. "We exposed him. Now the world has to choose." And across the ocean, Maya sat in front of a crowd at a youth summit, her voice steady in the microphone. "You've seen the truth. Now it's up to you, because silence is a luxury we can no longer afford." Her words, soft as snowfall, ignited another storm. And in the dark, Hale closed his eyes, whispering, "Let's see what they do with the light." It began not with applause but with silence heavy, reverent, electric. Maya stood center stage at the United Global Youth Forum in Chicago, the final speaker of the closing day. Her voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. The auditorium leaned into her, drawn not by her fame but by her fire. "When I was 10, she began, "I saw something terrible. I told the truth. No one listened." She paused, scanning the sea of faces, thousands of young people, activists, journalists, veterans, survivors. "But the second time I spoke, the world had no choice." A single clap broke the stillness, then another, then hundreds, then thousands standing, roaring, weeping. They weren't applauding her. They were applauding the sound of something waking up. Back at the Beckett estate, Thomas stood in the garden with Elena. The roses she once planted had begun to bloom again, vibrant, resilient. Maya's speech echoed from a small radio on the table beside them. "She's not the girl we met," Elena said. Thomas smiled softly. She's who she always was. We just finally saw her." Behind them, inside the house, Reese and Julian worked on the final upload and open-source archive of every file Hale ever created, released to trusted international coalitions, vetted journalists, and human rights organizations. No more holding back. No more keeping the sword sheathed. "I've scrubbed the metadata," Julian said. "Even if they try to rebuild it, they'll be chasing ghosts." Reese cracked a rare smile. "Then we've done our job." But outside the glow of hope, shadows still lingered. Hale had vanished again. No confirmed sightings, no intercepted communications, only speculation and fear. Some believed he was dead. Others thought he'd changed names, faces, maybe even sides. But Thomas knew better. Hale wasn't hiding. He was waiting. And yet, for the first time, that knowledge didn't weigh on him, because the story wasn't about Hale anymore. It wasn't about him, or Elena, or Reese. It was about Maya. That evening, Maya returned home. Not to cheers or cameras, but to arms Elena's embrace. Reese's silent nod, Thomas's steady hand on her shoulder. Family, not by blood, but by battle. "I missed you guys," she said, dropping her bag by the door. "We never left," Elena whispered. After dinner, they gathered by the fireplace. Outside, the desert wind howled against the windows. Inside, the room glowed with quiet warmth. Maya sat cross-legged on the rug. "Do you think it'll ever be over?" "No," Thomas said truthfully. "But that's not the point." Elena sipped her tea. "The point is to make sure it never becomes silent again." Maya nodded. She understood. Later that night, as the house slept, Thomas walked the halls. He paused before the study, looking at the wall where Maya's sketch had been framed. A pencil drawing of a girl watching the world burn her face, lit not by fear, but by determination. He turned off the lights, letting the moonlight spill across the floor. Somewhere far away, in a dim, cold room, Hale stood before a mirror, no longer a man of power, no longer worshipped or feared, just a man older, thinner, with the weight of his legacy pressing against his lungs. He opened a journal. The first page bore only a sentence: "Every movement needs its villain." He closed it. In Washington, hearings continued. Victims testified. Corporations crumbled. An international coalition was formed to investigate transnational human trafficking. Laws were rewritten, systems reviewed. Nothing perfect, nothing clean, but movement. And on a cool autumn morning, in a small town in Ohio, a classroom of fifth graders watched Maya's story as part of a civil rights unit. A girl with curly hair in the back raised her hand. "She was just a kid," the girl said. "How did she do all that?" The teacher smiled, because she didn't believe she was too small to matter. And in that room, another spark was born. Back in Arizona, Maya stood beneath the night sky. Alone, but not lonely. She looked up at the star-scattered, bright, stubborn. Her voice was soft. "We're still here," she whispered, "and we're not done." Behind her, the door opened. Thomas joined her, hands in his coat pockets. Thinking big thoughts? Thinking honest ones. They stood together in the hush of night. "Do you think they'll remember us?" Maya asked. Thomas smiled. "They'll remember what we stood for. That's enough." She nodded, the fire in her eyes steady. Justice wasn't clean, it wasn't quick, and it never arrived on time. But when it did come, it wore the face of a girl who refused to be quiet. And that, Thomas thought, was the kind of ending worth fighting for. This story reminds us that the most powerful voices often come from the most unexpected places. Maya, a young girl once dismissed and forgotten, became the spark that exposed a global injustice. Her courage teaches us that speaking up, especially when it's hardest, is how change begins. In a world that often silences truth, the act of standing firm in the face of fear is not only brave, it's necessary. Justice is not always swift, but it is always worth pursuing.